CD2. Unit 9. Trade. Recording 9.1.
Perhaps you could summarise for our listeners the points you've made so far, Ian. You started by telling us what free trade is.
Right. I defined it as a situation in which goods come into and out of a country without any controls or taxes. Countries which truly believe in free trade try to liberalise their trade. That's to say, they take away barriers to trade. They remove things which stop people trading freely. They have open borders and few controls of goods at customs.
Recording 9.2.
OK, then you gave several examples of barriers to trade.
Yes, I said there are two main barriers, tariffs and subsidies. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods so that the imports cannot compete so well against domestic products. Subsidies are money paid to domestic producers so that they can sell their goods more cheaply than foreign competitors. Tariffs and subsidies are barriers to trade because when people are given a choice, generally they will buy the cheapest product.
You mentioned other barriers, less important ones perhaps.
I talked about quotas, which limit the quantity of a product which can be imported, and I discussed other restrictions on trade, such as expensive licenses for importers, which add greatly to costs, and regulations relating to documents which a company must have to export its goods to certain countries. The documents can be very complicated and difficult to complete, so they slow down trading.
Recording 9.3.
I asked you if free trade was always a good thing.
And I answered, in principle, yes, it's a good thing. It's beneficial to countries.
Why?
Countries which open their markets usually have a policy of deregulation. That's to say, they free their companies to compete in markets without government control or subsidies. Because of this, consumers in free trade areas are offered a wider range of high-quality products at lower prices. People in those areas can move to the most productive parts of the economy and get better jobs with higher wages or salaries. OK?
So why do so many countries protect their industries and not allow free markets?
I gave 3 reasons, if you remember. Firstly, some people say, why should we practice free trade if other nations compete unfairly? For example, dumping is fairly common in international trade. When companies dump goods in overseas markets, they sell goods at very low prices, usually for less than it costs the company to produce the goods. Companies can usually only do that when they're heavily subsidized by their governments. Secondly, many people believe that strategic industries must be protected. These are industries that are very important to the economy: steel, power, communications, and so on. In the United States, many Americans think that the steel industry should be protected against cheap imports from Brazil and other countries. If the US depends too much on foreign-made steel, they argue, this could be bad in a time of war. Finally, some say that in developing countries, industries need to be protected until they're strong enough to compete in world markets. This is the infant industry argument. Certain industries have to be protected until they can stand on their own feet, as it were. My final point was that throughout the world there is a trend towards liberalising trade and removing trade barriers. The most successful economies tend to have open markets, and most of their industries have been deregulated.
Recording 9.4.
If I order 5,000 boxes of tea, what discount will you offer us?
On 5,000, nothing. But if you buy 10,000 boxes, then we'll offer you 10%.
OK, I'll think about that. And tell me, if we placed a very large order, say 15,000 boxes, would you be able to dispatch immediately?
We can normally guarantee to dispatch a large order within 2 weeks. But if you order at a peak time, like just before Christmas, it will be impossible to deliver that quickly.
I take it your price includes insurance.
Actually, no. Usually you'd be responsible for that. But if the order were really large, that would be negotiable, I'm sure.
What about payment?
To be honest, we'd prefer cash on delivery, as this is our first contact with you. If you were a regular customer, we would offer you 30 days credit, maybe even a little more.
That's all right, I quite understand.
Look, how about having some lunch now and continuing later this afternoon? Then we could meet for an evening meal.
Yes, let's continue after lunch. If I had more time, I would love to have dinner with you, but unfortunately my flight leaves at 7 tonight.
Recording 9.5.
When you go into a negotiation, do you always expect to win?
I guess the honest answer to that is I always have a clear expectation of what I expect to achieve, and I guess I would like to always win. Let me illustrate that for you. Something that was sort of shared with me very early in my career was the mnemonic LIM, and that's like, intend, must. What would I like to do? What would I intend to do? And what must I do? And this is probably well illustrated by a recent contract that we negotiated in the UK with a major leisure company. And I guess our like was we would like to win the business there and then in the negotiation on that day. I guess our intend was that we must leave that group thinking we are a very professional and competent outfit who can best meet their needs. And I guess our must was we must have done enough to keep the dialogue open and ensure that our competitor didn't win the business on that day. So the short answer is you don't always win. I always want to win, but I don't always expect to win, but I certainly expect to deliver the objective that we went in to achieve.
Recording 9.6.
Could you give me some tips for negotiating?
Yes, I think everybody has their own tips, but these are things that have worked for myself and the people I've worked with. And it's more around avoiding classic errors. And I guess the first one is to identify who the decision maker is. I've lost count of the occasions at every level, from first line salesman through to board director, board to board negotiations, where I've seen fantastic presentations, superb dialogue, and the person that's been sitting across the table, so to speak, is not the decision maker. So that's the first tip. Make sure you know who you're talking to. The second one is that all salesmen, if they're good salesmen, tend to be very enthusiastic about what they're selling. That could be a product or a service or even a social occasion, but it's all selling at the end of the day. And in their enthusiasm, they focus on their need rather than the buyer's need. So for example, in our own case, I've seen on many occasions people basically go straight to the point, we're here to sell you Coca-Cola. It's the world's #1 brand, you must want it. What they haven't done is establish the buyer's need. So for example, the buyer's need may be in a grocery store that they want to supply the world's #1 brand to encourage consumers to come in and purchase their range of products. The manager of a ball bearing factory might want a vending machine because if he supplies a free or discounted refreshment service, it keeps his union employees happy. So the important thing is to understand the buyer's need. Now, it's not impossible to sell without establishing that need, but it tends to mean you'll never have a long-term relationship. So, for example, again, the workplace example, I could come in, bang, sell you a Coca-Cola vending machine, pay you maybe a small royalty. Because I never established your need, if another soft drink supplier walks through the door and just offers you more money, you will probably switch. Whereas if we'd established the fact that all you were interested in was offering a service and you wanted it to be as hassle-free as possible, we could have tailored our offering. So I think that's very important. My favourite one, and I'm probably in danger of doing it myself now, is once you've made the sale, shut up. I think it's very important. Close the sale, reinforce the buyer's decision. Everybody likes to feel they've made a good decision, and then leave.
Recording 9.7. Extract 1.
OK, what do we want to get out of this meeting with Eastern Fabrics?
I think our main aim should be to get a better deal on prices. I've been checking up on Eastern Fabrics. They've just built a new factory in China. They need to keep it working to full capacity. They'll be keen to get our business, so they'll lower their prices if we play our cards right.
Right. Let's try to get 10% off their list prices.
Agreed.
Extract 2.
Can you tell us a little about your customers' needs and their buying habits? You know, what colours they like, what sizes are most popular, and what your main sales outlets are, that sort of thing.
Extract 3.
If you give us a discount on our first order, say 10%, we can accept the end of May as a delivery date. We'd like to have the goods earlier, but we understand this would be difficult for you.
A 10% discount? That's more than we usually offer new customers. But it might be possible, especially if we can deliver some of the shirts early in June.
Well, July and August are our peak selling months, so that would probably be okay.
Extract 4.
How about if we send the first consignment by air to make sure the goods arrive on time, and we'll send the rest by sea as soon as possible?
Sounds like a good idea to me. As long as we get the first consignment by the end of May, we'll be happy.
I can guarantee delivery by that date. OK?
Extract 5.
Normally we supply 3 colours only, black, blue and red, but with a variety of designs, of course. If you wanted the T-shirt in other colours...
What? You mean if we ordered other colours, the shirts would be more expensive?
Exactly. We'd have to charge a little more.
Extract 6.
Good. We agree on price, quantity, discounts, and let's see, method of transport. I'll send you an email confirming everything. Let me know if there are any problems.
Extract 7.
OK. I think we've covered everything. If there are any other points, I'll email you.
Great. That was a very good meeting. We covered a lot of ground. What time shall I meet you for dinner tonight?
Unit 10. Quality. Recording 10.1.
How do you define quality in business? How important is it?
Delivering good quality is absolutely fundamentally important to any business. I believe the best way to define quality is to look very closely at customers' expectations and then to look at the ability of a business to meet or exceed those expectations consistently. Customers generally place great trust in the ability of their favourite brands or companies to address their requirements dependably, whether it be a soap powder, a hotel room, or a massive conference facility. Our job in our business is to make sure that our customers' requirements are very clearly understood and to ensure that at every stage in the guest journey through our hotels, we're able to address our guests' needs smoothly, easily and efficiently.
Recording 10.2.
How should quality improvement be measured?
Well, as a general guide, I'd say quality improvement should be measured consistently over a period of time and very accurately so that everybody believes in the reports and the figures that are circulated around an organisation. But in 3 specific ways, we at Hilton measure the quality of our performance. Every year we contact thousands of guests to understand just how satisfied they are with all the important areas in our business, whether it be the way they arrive and depart from a hotel or the quality of their bedroom and the food that they eat. We contact all of our team members, the people who work for us around the world, to understand how satisfied they are with the experience of working for Hilton, their career development and the training they receive. And finally, we look at how efficiently and consistently we deliver our own operational standards So if we, for example, say that no one should take longer than a couple of minutes in a queue to be checked into our hotel, are we delivering that consistently around the world? And we do that through mystery visits to all of our hotels. That gives us guest satisfaction, operational efficiency, and the satisfaction of our team members in all of our hotels around the world.
Recording 10.3.
Does high quality mean high cost?
I guess it can do, but I think what's more important is investment in high quality something which will pay dividends to a company? Will it help to build profitability? Certainly, delivering good quality consistently is not something that can be done without any cost to an organization. Investment in good people, in good training, in efficient practices and processes will always mean that there is investment required. However, it should also be at the heart of delivering what any organization's customers are looking for. And if they're satisfied, and if they keep coming back as a result, then what should follow is healthy revenues and even healthier profits. And that, for me, makes investment in quality something that's very affordable. In fact, it's absolutely essential.
Recording 10.4.
Good afternoon, Electrical Goods Department.
Hello, this is Teresa Green. I'm calling about the DVD player I bought from you a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, there's a problem with it.
I'm sorry to hear that. What seems to be the problem?
It doesn't work.
Could you give me some details, please?
Well, the eject mechanism's not reliable. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Can you bring it in? Then we can look into the matter and we'll probably send the machine back to the manufacturer.
I'm sorry, but I'd prefer to exchange it.
I'm afraid it's not our policy to replace items. We'll send it to the manufacturer for repair.
Well, that's not really good enough. I'd like a different make, and I don't mind paying a little more for a better model.
All right then, bring the machine in and we'll see what we can do for you.
Recording 10.5. 1.
The worst time is 7 to 11 in the morning. There are always big queues at the check-in desk, and it's very disorganised. I also missed a flight because of the long line at passport control. There are always huge queues there.
2.
It's just like the airports back home for us smokers. I had to go right outside the terminal to have a cigarette before my flight. And I wasn't the only person there, I can tell you. I hoped you British would be a bit more understanding about smoking. We're not criminals, are we?
3.
There's a huge duty-free shop. That's good. But the staff are too keen to get you to spend your money. They follow you round the shop offering special promotions. They really hassle you. The other services are poor. They need more dispensers for candy bars, beverages, magazines, and so on in the waiting areas. Such things are useful when your flight is delayed.
4.
It's difficult to get information about flights. The public announcements are either non-existent or so quiet you can't hear them above people talking. The TV screens could provide updates on a regular basis, but the information is very vague. A few weeks ago, my flight was delayed 4 hours. Engine trouble. No one told us anything. There should be more airport staff to deal with emergencies.
5.
You need to provide guards or officials to watch passengers and their belongings. I put my briefcase down when I was getting money out of a cash machine. It was gone in a flash. Never saw who took it. I had my laptop in it, and I wasn't insured. I talked to another passenger. He'd had small things stolen from his luggage on 3 occasions.
6.
I find the worst service is at the point where I pick up my suitcase as it comes off the plane. There's this huge room, but it only has 2 conveyor belts, and they break down all the time. You often wait about 20 minutes for the first bags to appear. So now I expect to wait at least 30 minutes before I pass through customs. Oh, and another thing. You need more trolleys. All over the airport, not just at the point where you pick up your luggage.
7.
The facilities for disabled people like me could be better. I had to pay £18 to use a wheelchair to get to the plane. I think it's outrageous. I don't know whose responsibility it is.
8.
Well, my complaint is that there's nowhere to park. I travel everywhere by car. Your car park is much too small. The other day I spent 40 minutes driving around until I found a space. It was only my good luck that someone was leaving. This is the 21st century, isn't it? You'd think airports of all places would be prepared for the increased traffic.
Unit 11. Ethics. Recording 11.1. What is the bank's ethical policy?
Our ethical policy is a clear set of promises to our customers about how we will and won't invest their money. It's important, though, to understand that the promises we make are based on the views of the customers. Firstly, it's worth explaining the development of the policy, which was introduced in 1992 after consultation with our customers. We now consult them regularly to ensure that the investment guidelines we follow continue to reflect their views. We implement the policy by publishing the types of business activities that are of such concern to our customers. They don't want the bank to provide banking services to these types of business. For example, we will not invest in a business involved in the manufacture or transfer of armaments to oppressive regimes. The policy also contains a number of positive statements that commit the bank to do business with customers involved in social or environmentally beneficial activities, such as renewable energy and energy efficiency. To show customers we are keeping our promises, our selection procedure is independently audited. The results are published in our annual report.
Recording 11.2. Is it really the job of business to provide a lead in ethical standards?
Businesses don't operate in isolation. Businesses are part of the wider community through their staff and their suppliers, for example. Business activities will inevitably lead to a series of ecological and social effects. The nature of some industries has huge and very obvious effects on the environment and society, whilst the effect of others, such as the financial services industry, is not always so apparent. The bank chose to base its policy on the concerns of its customers because it is their money that is being used, and they should have a say in how it is used. We also campaign for change on issues that our customers feel strongly about. One of our first campaigns called for a ban on the use of landmines, now banned in 142 countries. Since then, we've campaigned on other issues from third world debt, human rights, fair trade and youth poverty. Customers can get as involved as they want, and because the bank represents them, it means their view is more likely to be heard.
Recording 11.3. Can successful businesses always behave ethically?
We believe they can. In fact, we believe that in the years to come, the only truly successful businesses will be those that achieve a lasting balance between their own interests and those of society and the natural world. Therefore, businesses cannot just have a self-interest, they must play a social role. Our position has enabled us to build trust, develop our brand, and have a positive impact on the bank's bottom line. On the issue of trust, research shows that trust in business has been declining for a number of years, and the general public feel that businesses don't take them seriously. Higher trust creates higher loyalty. First, because customers trust you, they are less likely to look elsewhere in the first place. Second, if you do make a mistake, they are more likely to forgive you.
Recording 11.4.
I'll never forget the trouble we had with that face cream. We launched it and, it was a real winner. I mean, it was going really well.
Great.
When suddenly people started phoning and complaining it was burning their skin.
Burning their skin? You mean like a kind of allergy?
Yeah, It was making red marks on their faces. The newspapers heard about it and wanted to know what we were doing about it.
Ah, typical. They don't exactly help, do they? So what did you do?
We didn't know what to do. You see, we'd tasted it for over 6 months and, there'd been no bad reaction to it.
Well, so what was the problem?
Well, we'd invested a lot in the product and the launch. I mean, you know what advertising costs are these days. Then suddenly, the number of complaints doubled in the space of a week or so.
Doubled? Incredible. Did you manage to keep it quiet?
No. Our managing director got more than a bit worried. Said all this was harming the company's image. So we recalled the product and lost a lot of money. Oh, I tell you, the only people with red faces were us. Since then, we've kept away from skincare products.
Recording 11.5.
We've got to do something about it. People are taking too many days off sick. Sick leave increased by 12% last year. I got the figures today. On average, staff took 14 days off sick. That's far too many.
Absolutely, it's really damaging for us. It's affecting the service we give our customers and it's costing us a lot of money each year. It can't go on.
OK. Well, as I see it, there are several ways we could deal with this. We could get tough and simply say no paid leave at all for the first 3 days someone is sick. Or we could do it another way. Offer staff a bonus at the end of the year if they don't take much sick leave. And there's a third option. We could bring in a doctor and physiotherapist for staff, and free health tests and counselling. They could check up on staff who are taking far too much sick leave, the ones who think it's extra holidays for them.
Let's look at the pros and cons of the first option. No paid leave for the first 3 days staff are sick. On the one hand, I think it will reduce the amount of sick leave because people will lose pay when they're off work. On the other hand, it's very unfair for people who are genuinely sick. If they're suffering from a bad cold or flu, for example. It wouldn't be popular with the staff or with the unions.
Well, let's look at this from another angle. It might be worth using a completely different approach. We could try sending a questionnaire to all staff, asking them to suggest ideas for reducing absenteeism because of sickness. Of course, we'd explain why the present policy isn't working.
Good idea. If we do this, then they're more likely to buy into any new scheme. Yes, it should work well.
Right. So, the best way forward is to sound out staff and get their opinions. A survey will give us all the data we need.
And the next thing to do is to prepare a questionnaire. I take it you want my department to do that?
Yes, if you would. Could you have a draft questionnaire ready by next Monday for our meeting?
Yes, I think we can manage that. I'll let you know when it's ready.
Recording 11.6.
A bit of information now, Nichols, I think you ought to know. Carl often has lunches with Monica Kaminsky, the design manager of Rochester Electronics, our main competitor.
Monica Kaminsky? Really? That's something I didn't know.
Yes, and she often phones him at work. She has long chats with him. I've no idea what they talk about.
Am I reading you right? Are you saying there's something going on between them?
Well, since you ask, Carl got divorced last year. There's a rumour going round Monica's more than just an acquaintance. I thought you might like to know that. Someone saw them together at a cinema last Saturday. It looked as if they...
Thanks, Bob. I've heard enough. I won't be saying anything to Carl about this. It's his business. I trust him to keep his personal and business life separate.
OK. I won't say anything more then. What are you having for lunch?
Recording 11.7.
I can't believe what you're saying, Carl. I'm really shocked. I thought we had a good relationship. Why on earth do you want us to break up? I don't get it.
Well, we've had some good times together, I know, but...
But?
Well, it's about work, really. I mean, we work for rival companies, and that's a problem. A very big problem, actually.
Oh, what do you mean? Problem.
Think about it. We often talk about things that happen at work. You can't help it, but I think we talk too much about work sometimes, and that's not good.
I don't know. I think we talk about all kinds of things, not just work. That'd be boring.
Yes, but I still feel I talked too much about work in the past.
Ah, I see. You're referring to...
Yeah, the DC-01 can opener. I seem to remember I told you quite a lot about the problems we'd had designing it, and how we solved them. That information could have been very useful to your company, let's face it.
Listen, Carl, are you accusing me of using that information to help us design our can opener? Because if you are, that's so unfair.
I'm not accusing you of anything, but some of my colleagues are sure I leaked information to you. They don't think I'm trustworthy, and that's making life very difficult for me.
Sorry, Carl. I can't stop people talking. Should I say gossiping? Anyway, you didn't have to sign a confidentiality agreement, so what are you worrying about?
No, I didn't, but I don't want to get a reputation. I think we need to separate for a while. At least until people have forgotten about the DC-01 can opener.
I see. I'm disappointed with you, Carl. I get the feeling you don't trust me anymore. I didn't think you were such a weak person, so easily influenced by people. Maybe you're right. Maybe we should go our own ways for a while.
Unit 12. Leadership. Recording 12.1.
What qualities are needed to run a large company effectively?
The leader of a large company needs to do three things. Firstly, to create a picture of where the whole team is meant to be going. What is this journey, the change, and the way forward? And particularly, what is my role or your role going to be in that journey? So that's vision. The second thing is inspiration, which is a very personal thing, but great leaders manage to inspire the people that they work with. And thirdly, because all businesses need to move forward and make money, momentum. They manage to create the momentum and make sure that people are moving forward with the various projects that are under their control.
Recording 12.2.
And how do you help leaders to develop their skills?
We think that the way that people develop is 70-20-10, which means that 70% of the way they develop is on the job, 20% is through coaching by somebody else, and only 10% is by training. So the vast majority of how somebody learns anything, and particularly how they learn to be a better leader, is on-the-job training. And what that means for the career of somebody is that they need to experience a lot of different types of activity, lots of different roles and lots of different challenges. And only then can they start to build up a range of experiences and a range of skills in leading people in different situations.
Recording 12.3.
Which leaders have influenced or impressed you?
This is always a very difficult question because the people who have influenced me may be people that nobody else has ever heard of. So whenever I'm asked this question, I always have to give the examples of very famous people, but unfortunately these are people that I haven't personally worked with. So there is a bit of a problem always with this question. However, Nelson Mandela is someone who has always impressed me. In addition to the vision and inspiration and momentum that we mentioned earlier, he also has some magical charisma even via the television screen and is clearly able to move people to action. The second would be Winston Churchill, because I think he's a very interesting example of somebody who was a very good leader for one era in England, Britain's history, although he was not seen to be a very good leader at a different era. So I think he's a good example of a man who was good for one time but not for another. And then I have Bernie Ellis, who was a postman, who coached our rowing boat when I was at university. Nobody else will have heard of him except the 8 people in the boat. But he was a brilliant leader because he was very down to earth and he managed to inspire us to row very fast.
Recording 12.4.
OK, the main item on the agenda is whether we should sell our store in Paris. I'd like to hear your opinions about this. But first of all, can you give us the background, Michel?
Yes. As you all know, we opened the store in Boulevard Jourdan 5 years ago. We hoped it would be a base for expansion into other areas of France. But it hasn't been a success. It hasn't attracted enough customers, and it's made losses every year. As I see it, it's going to be very difficult to get a return on our investment.
I agree. There's no possibility it'll make a profit. It's in the wrong location, there's too much competition, and our products don't seem to appeal to French people. We should never have entered the market. It was a mistake. We should sell out as soon as possible.
I don't agree with that at all. Things have gone wrong there, it's obvious. The management's let us down badly. They haven't adapted enough to market conditions. But it's far too early to close the business down. I suggest we bring in some marketing consultants, a French firm if possible, and get them to review the business. We need more information about where we're going wrong.
I totally agree with you. It's too early to close down the store, but I am worried about the store's location. We're an upmarket business, but most of the stores in the area have moved down market, selling in the lower price ranges. That's a problem. I think we have to make changes very soon. I mean, our losses are increasing every year. We just can't go on like this. We may have to revise our strategy. Maybe we made a mistake in choosing France for expansion.
Well, thanks for your opinions. I think on balance we feel we should keep the store going for a while. So the next thing to do is to appoint a suitable firm of marketing consultants to find out what our problems are and make recommendations. Personally, I'm convinced the store will be a success if we get the marketing mix right. We've got to get the store back into profit. We've invested a lot of money in it.
Recording 12.5.
I don't think it will be too difficult to improve the store's performance. I suggest you review your product ranges as soon as possible and stop promoting those items which aren't making any money. What you need is more knowledge of the youth market. They're the consumers who are spending most money on clothes. You should target that segment of the market. Also, I think you should hire a top executive to run that part of the business, someone with a really good track record in the retail fashion trade. I could suggest names if you wish. You need to take a hard look at other parts of the business. I'm not happy with the furniture department in the store. It takes up a lot of space and isn't making any money. To be honest, I just don't think it'll ever make much money. I also have doubts about your stationery department. Is it really worth keeping? The answer to your problems is to do something quickly to stop profits falling and turn the store around. So, this is what you should do now, in my opinion. Reduce your range of products, cut out the loss makers. Hire a new executive with experience of the fashion clothing business. Close down furniture and possibly stationery. OK? Any questions?
Recording 12.6.
Here are some ideas, in no particular order, that we can think about. Some of them you may think are a bit crazy or not practical, but hear me out. I know of one CEO who sends out birthday cards with his signature and a personal message to every employee. We could try that. We could also start a company magazine. It may be a bit expensive, but I think it could really help. I know one of our competitors has an Employee of the Month scheme. It's very popular. Staff nominate a colleague who has done well in some way. The employee selected gets a company gift. I would also like to get out of my office frequently this year and drop in on staff at the different stores. And should we have an open door policy in every store? Employees can then see the manager when they want to. Now, this sounds crazy, but what about having a company uniform? This type of thing seems to work well in Asian countries. It creates loyalty and good team spirit. Another thing I've been thinking about is to cancel the end-of-year bonus scheme. It's very expensive, and spend the money instead on Christmas parties at top hotels. Finally, I'd like to see a new appraisal scheme. I haven't thought about the details, but it should reward high achievers generously.
Unit 13. Innovation. Recording 13.1. The idea of a lone inventor who makes a discovery or has a sudden clever idea or brainwave is maybe a little out of date today. While these types of pioneers do still exist, these days companies often have large R&D departments, teams of people who are constantly innovating and perfecting designs. Perhaps they begin with a concept and then build a prototype or working model. Sometimes, during testing, there is a setback when it becomes clear the design has a fault. At this point, maybe it is time to start again or go back to the drawing board. More work is done and there is a breakthrough. A solution is found. The product can be retested and then hopefully manufactured. The company will apply for a patent for the design so that others cannot copy it and steal the idea. Recording 13.2.
When you make a presentation, the first stage is to plan it. You should start by thinking about your audience, who they are, what they know about the subject, and what they expect from you. Think also about what their attitude will be to you. Will they be interested, enthusiastic, cooperative, or perhaps critical? Are you presenting to a group from your own culture or to people of different cultures? All these factors will influence the way you approach the presentation. If possible, try to visit the room where you're going to give the talk. Check the equipment and make sure your voice carries to the back of the room if you don't use a microphone. Look at the seating arrangements and make sure they are what you want. You also want to feel comfortable and relaxed when you're presenting. You're now ready to prepare what you're going to say. Stage 1 is the opening. A good opening is essential as you will be nervous and you need to grab the attention of the audience. You start by introducing yourself and then you use a technique to get the audience's interest. We call this the hook, which focuses the audience's attention on what you're saying. You can do this in various ways. You can ask a question, use a famous quotation, use a striking visual image, appeal directly to the audience's interests or needs. Once you have the audience's attention, you should tell them the structure of your presentation. You give them a map of the talk with signposts along the route so they know what you will cover in your talk. After the opening and a brief introduction of your subject, you come to the main body of your presentation. Then you have a conclusion during which you summarise your key points and give your final opinion and recommendations. After that, it's the question and answer session.
Recording 13.3.
Some tips now about how you deliver the presentation, how you actually perform it. Firstly, what about the opening 2 minutes? You'll be very nervous, almost everyone is. Some people deal with this by writing down the opening 2 minutes, marking the stresses and pauses, and practicing it again and again. They memorise the opening, and that helps to calm their nerves. Rehearse your presentation using the equipment you will use when you do the real thing. Have a backup plan.
What will you do if your projector doesn't work? If your computer crashes? If you cannot find your slide tray because you left it at the hotel? Keep good eye contact with your audience at all times, even when you use PowerPoint or the OHP for visual effects. Eye contact will help you show that you are speaking to the audience, not at them. You need to build a rapport with the audience and to develop a warm and friendly relationship with them. Enthusiasm is important. If you are enthusiastic, your audience will be too. The right body language is important. Generally speaking, it's better to stand than sit when making your presentation. Avoid repetitive, annoying gestures, but dramatic gestures can be effective when you make key points. Vary the speed of your voice. A pause is often very effective. Vary your intonation. Change the pitch of your voice by using a high or low tone. Vary the volume of your voice. You can speak loudly or quietly to attract your audience's attention. Follow the KISS principle. Keep it short and simple. Use short words and sentences. Don't use jargon unless your audience understand it. Generally present concrete facts rather than abstract ideas. Give examples to support your points. Use visuals which can be seen by all the audience. Don't put too much on a single transparency or slide. Visuals add variety and interest to your talk. Finally, end with a bang. Give the audience some memorable words or phrases which sum up your key messages. Or use a visual or slide which will remain in the memory of your audience. Thank them for giving up their time to attend your presentation and ask the audience if they have any questions. Remember, a presentation is a performance. What you say is important, but how you say it is even more important.
Recording 13.4.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to my presentation. I know you're all very busy, so I'll be as brief as possible. OK then. I'm going to talk about the new chocolate bar we're putting on the market, the Frejus Premium Bar. I'll tell you about the test launch we carried out in the southwest of England a few weeks ago. My presentation is divided into 3 parts. First, I'll give you some background about the launch. After that, I'll tell you how we got on and assess its effectiveness. Finally, I'll outline our future plans for the product. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Right, let's start with the background to the launch. As you know, Frejus is an orange and nut bar with a distinctive taste. It's been thoroughly tested in focus groups and special attention was paid to packaging. It's wrapped in a metallic foil. The colours are rich, strong, to give high visual impact. OK, everyone? Yes, Johan, you have a question. So, that's the background. Right, let's now move on to the test launch. How successful was it? Well, in 2 words, very successful. If you look at the graph, you'll see the bar's actual sales compared with forecast sales. Quite a difference, isn't there? The sales were over 20% higher than we predicted. In other words, a really good result, well above our expectations. The sales show that the pricing of the product was correct, and they show that as a premium line, the Frejus bar should be successful nationwide. To sum up, a very promising test launch. I believe the bar has great potential in the market. Right, where do we go from here? Obviously, we'll move on to stage 2 and have a national advertising and marketing campaign. In a few months, you'll be visiting our sales outlets and taking orders, I hope, for the new product. Thanks very much. Any questions?
Unit 14. Competition. Recording 14.1.
The credit card business is highly competitive. How do you stay ahead of your competitors?
Well, it's certainly true to say that in the UK, especially, the credit card market these days is hugely competitive. When Barclaycard launched in 1966, we were the only credit card in the UK, and it took some 10 or 12 years before we even saw one other competitor in the UK market. Today, if you apply for a credit card in the UK, you can choose between maybe 1,000, 1,500 different cards from different providers. So there is a huge amount of competition out there. The way that Barclaycard tries to maintain a difference to all the rest and tries to stay competitive, we do that in a number of ways. Firstly, we have a brand, a very strong brand in the UK market, which is fairly unique for the credit card market. We've invested in that brand over a long period of time, and certainly it has a level of recognition and stature that our competitors just don't have. We also obviously need to compete on price. We need to make sure that we're always competitive on price. That doesn't necessarily always mean being the very cheapest. We have a tradition of providing our customers with extra value features and services on their cards, which we will continue to do. And we need to innovate. We need to make sure that when things change in the credit card market, people always want what's new and what's exciting. And if you can be the company that provides that for them, then you're going to succeed. But ultimately, the way that we stay competitive is to keep hold of our customers. And the way that you do that is by offering them good service. Most people are very happy to have a credit card and to pay a reasonable sum for that credit card. The reason they will leave you is if you annoy them. So the more we can do to provide good service, look after our customers when they're with us, the more competitive we stay.
Recording 14.2.
Does competition always lead to better goods and services and to better value for customers?
I think that broadly, yes. Competition does provide more services and more goods for customers. And it's really a question of choice. When you look in the credit card market, for example, we're seeing that customers increasingly don't always want to borrow on a credit card. They may look to other forms of borrowing, whether that's a straightforward loan, whether that's some finance from a store or from a shop when they walk into a store, or whether they want to draw down equity against their house. That's to say, to use the value in their house to borrow perhaps at cheaper rates. So customers are getting more and more choice in terms of the way that they borrow. When you look at the credit card market in particular, certainly the quality of goods and services has expanded rapidly in recent years. We have offers in the market today where you can borrow at interest rates as low as 0%, for example, zero interest. When you look back 2 or 3 years, those offers were available for maybe 2 or 3 months. Barclaycard has just released or just launched an offer giving customers 0% interest for 12 months. So free money for 12 months is an incredibly competitive deal. You also see features such as cashback, where you're rewarded for spending on your card with a cash rebate once a year. So ultimately, yes, the market has seen vastly increased competition in recent years, and with that, a lot wider choice for customers. Ultimately, not just more choice, but more choice more cheaply.
Recording 14.3.
How do you see competition affecting the way your business operates in the future?
What we're seeing is a number of different reasons why our customers choose to borrow money. And what we're seeing is a number of different businesses willing to offer them that lending. For example, it's not unusual now for customers to borrow from their supermarket, for example. So we need to make sure that however or why ever our customers want to borrow money, we're able to provide that to them. And that won't always mean borrowing on a credit card. Broadly speaking, people borrow for one of 3 reasons. They borrow to buy major items, a car or a holiday, something like that. They borrow to consolidate other debts, so they put all of their debts in one place so as it's more manageable and they have to make just one monthly payment. Or they borrow in a more traditional way, if you like, for credit cards. They borrow for everyday purchases simply to spread the cost of their monthly spending in a more manageable way. So we need to recognise that customers are borrowing in these three different ways, and we need to make sure that we have the right products and services for them when they choose to do that, and that we're not simply asking them to always borrow on a credit card. That won't always be the right way. So competition is really about providing our customers with increased choice and increased flexibility, and we are becoming much more of a lending business rather than simply a credit card business.
Recording 14.4.
OK, perhaps we could start, as we agreed, by discussing the kind of relationship we want.
OK.
Usually with a major distributor or agent, we don't offer an exclusive agency agreement because they don't want it. They like to use and distribute the products of most of the top companies. They make more money that way.
Yes, a non-exclusive contract would be perfect for us too. As you know, we represent many famous brands and will be happy to add your product lines to our list.
Right. Now, prices. We like to recommend prices for each overseas market. We advise on minimum and maximum prices for each of our models.
No, that's no good for us. We prefer to set the prices for all the products we offer. We know the conditions of the market far better than you. We would set the correct prices to maximise profits, of course.
OK. It's not really a problem if you prefer it that way. I won't argue with you. Now the commission. I suggest a rate of 15% on all the revenue you obtain, either directly or indirectly. Is that OK?
15% is too low. We want at least 20%. The market is very competitive. We'll have to spend a lot on advertising and promoting your products.
Yes, but we could help with this.
How much will you pay us?
Well, we might go 50-50 up to an agreed limit. We can talk about the exact figures later.
I'll have to think about it. We will talk about the commission later.
Let's discuss the length of the contract. Normally we offer 2 years, and to be honest, with a new distributor we prefer a shorter period. Either side can terminate with 60 days' notice.
Well, it must be at least 3 years for it to be profitable for us.
Well, we can talk about it later. I suggest we break for lunch now.
Recording 14.5. 1.
A non-exclusive contract would be perfect for us too.
2.
No, that's no good for us.
3.
We know the conditions of the market far better than you.
4.
I suggest a rate of 15% on all the revenue you obtain.
5.
15% is too low. We want at least 20%.
6.
We could help with this.
7.
How much will you pay us?
8.
We will talk about the commission later.
9.
To be honest, with a new distributor, we prefer a shorter period.
10.
It must be at least 3 years.
New intermediate market leader. Test file. Entry test. Listening.
You've reached the voicemail message service of PRJ Solutions. No one's here to take your call at the moment, but if you leave your message and contact details after the tone, we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Hello, this is Sally Bourdillon calling. That is SALLYBOURDILLON. I'd like to leave a message for Martin James in your advertising department. I'm ringing about our product launch at Furniture Wagon.
I'd just like to let him know that the event has had to be postponed, unfortunately. It was going to be held on November the 13th, but it's now going to take place on November the 21st. And it can't be in the morning, as we originally wanted. It's going to have to be at 3 o'clock now, and not at 10, which is a real shame. Anyway, please can Martin call me on my mobile to discuss things in more detail. My number's 07979 56112. Oh, sorry, that's 113 at the end. Thank you. Goodbye.
Progress test 1. Listening. Speaker 1.
It's important that you give everyone an opportunity to speak if they want to, without interrupting them unnecessarily. That's not to say, though, that you should let certain people dominate the session. Quite the opposite. Create an atmosphere of openness and trust, so that everyone feels able to make their contribution.
Speaker 2.
Book an appropriate room for the type of meeting, and don't forget to take into account the number of people attending. Not one that's too big or too small, too hot or too cold. It's awful sitting being squashed in a hot and stuffy old seminar room, or freezing in a huge boardroom.
Speaker 3.
Ensure that when you're organising a meeting, that those people who have been asked to come are really the ones you need to be there. There's nothing worse than sitting in a meeting where you have nothing to say. And it's even worse being in a meeting with people who have nothing to do with the topic under discussion.
Speaker 4.
Being late for a meeting shows a lack of respect for the other participants, so make sure you get there promptly and don't wait until someone comes to find you. If you really can't get there, make sure you send your apologies way in advance so that there's time for someone else to be invited in your place.
Speaker 5.
If you are arranging the meeting, make sure that you let everyone know beforehand what is expected of them and what they need to bring or read. You know, make photocopies of any reports or whatever that you want them to look at in advance.
Progress test 2. Listening 1.
So, if you'd like to look at the next chart, you'll see that profits at Simpson's main Highfield branch have risen not by 10%, as was predicted by most business analysts. Instead, the company has seen profits jump to 11.25%. That is, when you compare the figures with the same time 12 months ago. This means that total annual profits at the company rose by £825,250 to reach £1.21 million. If we now take a look at profits at Litty, the market leader, for a moment, you'll notice that they reached a peak in March of £7.31 million. That's over £250,000 more than had been expected for that month, by the way. However, before the end of September, profits had plummeted by £4.26 million to £3.5 million. The last quarter of the year is traditionally the best time at the company, so analysts are very hopeful of achieving profits of £0.6 million for that period.
Progress test 2. Listening 2.
The first nominee is Catherine Roper, 35, who runs her own company offering business training on cultural awareness. After 7 years' steady growth, her company Keys now employs over 100 people in 20 different countries throughout the world. Catherine hopes to expand into the language training business in Central and Eastern Europe and plans acquisitions to increase growth. The second person nominated is Deepak Patel, 25, who set up Petra 10 years ago to provide financial products to small and medium-sized enterprises in the northwest of the UK. The company, of which he is managing director, has become one of the most respected financial companies in the region, providing a whole range of valued financial products and expert advice and guidance. 2 months ago, the company extended its focus into property. Thirdly, we have Ricky Rand, age 30. Ricky joined his father's clothing business, Real Rags, straight from school, learning all aspects of the operation. Since his father's retirement 5 years ago, Rand has become CEO and has continued to develop the business. Real Rags is the nation's most successful clothing retailer, with an annual turnover of £1.5 million. The fourth nominee is Gary Bell, 42. He founded the employment agency Park Services, placing production workers in factories throughout the UK. In 2002, Bell acquired the rival recruitment company Manifold. After a complex restructuring operation, Bell has turned the business into one of the country's most successful agencies of its kind. The final person here tonight is Melanie Rogers, 35, who started her career in sales after completing a degree in information technology. After a work placement at engineering company Marbank and a business trip to Japan, she decided to establish her own company, which now offers IT solutions to small and medium-sized enterprises throughout the southeast of England.
Progress Test 3. Listening 1.
Good morning. Sandra Collins speaking.
Hello, it's Rob McCartney here from sales.
Hello, Rob. Look, if you're calling about your commission, I'm really sorry about the payment delay. It's being sorted.
Well, no. It's a bit more awkward, really. I'd like to make a formal complaint.
I see. What's the problem exactly?
Well, it's about Sam.
Sam James here in personnel?
No, my office manager.
Oh, okay.
He's not actually physically threatened me or anything, but he has tried to keep my mouth shut, tried to pay me off.
When you say that, what do you mean exactly? That he's trying to get you to accept a bribe?
Yes.
So, could you tell me what's been happening?
Well, I discovered he's been selling goods to clients at a higher price than normal.
Have I got this right? He's keeping the difference?
Uh-huh.
Ah. In cases of fraud like this, I'm afraid that I can't do anything without any proof. Could you put your complaint down in writing, together with any evidence, and send it to my director immediately?
Okay.
Then we'll be able to conduct an internal investigation straight away.
Okay. I'll get that to him as soon as I can. And thanks.
Progress Test 3. Listening 2.
So, Charles, how did your business start?
Gina and I both used to work as bankers in New York for JP Morgan, but after several years travelling around the world for business and never seeing each other, we finally decided to leave the company and look for our own entrepreneurial opportunity.
So, what did you do?
Well, we saw an opportunity in ice cream the very first time we went into a UK supermarket. Stores in the UK have more varieties of cream than those in the US, but fewer of ice cream. We thought that if Britain had the world's best dairy produce, it should also have the world's best super premium ice cream, which it didn't.
What's super premium ice cream?
It's a high-quality ice cream made from milk or high-fat cream, giving it a fat content of 16 to 18%. And ours contains no artificial ingredients, so it has a traditional feel to it, like it was made in your kitchen, rather than being mass-produced. It tends to be priced at more than £6 a litre, so that's higher than in America. In the UK, the leading players are Ben & Jerry's and Häagen-Dazs.
So what kind of market research did you do?
We spent 18 months analysing the trends of different types of ice cream and the dairy market. But we were coming at this as consumers, not people from a food manufacturing background. We wanted our ice cream to be less sweet than the alternatives available in the UK. And we had to overcome a lot of ridicule from potential rivals at trade shows who told us the British prefer sugary ice cream. We believed in our product and signed up for an ice cream manufacturing programme to learn more about the whole process.
What happened then?
We finally decided to lease a factory near to our key market, the southeast. It took about 6 months to make the factory ready for food production and to buy the machinery, and £250,000 in capital. Within 2 years, we had taken on 7 members of staff and were supplying supermarkets like Tesco's. Demand just grew.
I read that turnover is expected to reach £1 million next year.
Really? Well, that sounds good. We've certainly made a real breakthrough in terms of supermarkets without spending much on marketing. Our production process means we can double our output with only a third more staff.
Well, I'm sure the listeners will join me in wishing you even greater success in the future.
Thank you.
Progress Test 4. Listening.
I'd now like to hand over to Mark Parry.
Thank you, Jim. It was at the end of last year when I sat down with the CEO of a leading fast-moving consumer goods business to talk about where companies should focus their innovation effort. I'm worried that the way we do business might come to an end in 2 to 3 years, he said. I mean, we make lots of small product improvements, get them to launch as quickly as we can, and then spend lots of money on marketing them. But each time, the lifetime of that product gets shorter and the amount of dollars we spend gets higher. It can't go on. Judging by a number of recent profit warnings, that time is already upon us. Unilever admitted last month that sales of its leading brands were likely to fall in the third quarter. Colgate-Palmolive, Coca-Cola and Cadbury all warned of lower than expected earnings. The last two, together with Unilever, blamed bad weather, but in reality, they are being squeezed on price by retailer power and own-label brands. This results in companies spending up to 60% of their marketing budgets on promotional offers to supermarket chains to guarantee them space on the shelves. The ad agencies tell the companies they should spend more on their brands and so on. Good luck to them. But we give our clients different advice. We tell them that it's too late. They must start to innovate in terms of what they produce and sell. They must also break 2 outdated assumptions, which leads me on to my second piece of advice. There's an assumption that our customer is the consumer. Wrong. The retailer is your customer. For too long, companies have developed new products based on consumer insight-driven research, focus groups, consumer pilots, and so on. Rarely do these start from the needs of the retailer. And what are these? Increased revenue, location, lower cost of capital, improved stock turnover, perhaps. So, how can a CEO ensure the products meet at least some of these needs? And thirdly, companies think that the retailer is our distributor. Michael Dell created a $40 billion market leader by avoiding distribution channels and going straight to consumers. Other companies can do this too. Dell also lets customers design what they want from their own PC.
Exit Test Listening 1. Speaker 1.
When you're making arrangements on the phone, speak slowly and clearly. If the meeting you're arranging is for the 15th, then it's no good if the person you're speaking to turns up on the 5th because they misheard you. Likewise, if you can't hear what the other person's saying, ask them to repeat what they said. Finally, before closing the call, confirm all the important details like times and dates.
Speaker 2.
Sometimes you will have to solve a sensitive or tricky problem on the phone, and you may find yourself dealing with someone who is angry or upset about something. If this is the case, take a deep breath and don't start arguing with them. Instead, make sure you try and solve the problem calmly and effectively. Whatever you do, just don't hang up on the caller.
Speaker 3. Dealing with complaints can be very tricky, particularly on the phone, but there are ways of achieving a successful outcome. Let the other person know you are really listening and show understanding of their point of view. You will, of course, need to establish the exact nature of the problem, but remember to let them finish speaking first. Finally, tell the caller how you intend to follow up their complaint. Speaker 4.
Negotiating on the phone is never easy. You can't see the other person, for one thing, so you don't know if they're looking pleased, angry or whatever. But as with negotiating face-to-face, decide what your objectives are before you call. Note down in advance what you are prepared to give up to the other party. Remember, the most important thing is to make decisions that both partners are happy with.
Speaker 5.
Whenever you answer the phone, you are the voice of the company for a few minutes at least, so make sure you give the right impression. Establish a rapport with the caller. For instance, ask them how they are, about their family, their work, the weather, or whatever. Of course, not all subjects are appropriate for all cultures and for all people, so bear this in mind. You certainly don't want to upset anyone.
Exit test. Listening 2.
Over to our business correspondent, Jane. Thank you. Today we're looking at the performance of retailers in the region, starting with Matthews, the biggest. The company recently announced that turnover has gone down significantly compared to last year, and that there has been a 22% drop in profits over the same 12-month period. Sales of its range of clothing have also fallen by 31%, a figure much worse than expected. Most of the region's smaller clothing retailers have also experienced problems, resulting in at least half a dozen having to sell off some of their branches and lose staff. Cloth Kids and Market, two companies severely affected, went out of business in July. They were followed by Wear Us in early August. As for Beanley's, which used to be known as the region's coolest clothing chain, it is currently in the middle of a major restructuring operation. Analysts predict that Beanley's will shortly announce a number of store closures. Analysts claim that retailers' problems have come, firstly, from the expectations of today's consumers. They want to see new fashions monthly rather than just once or twice a year. There are, of course, also lots of clothing operations in the region, meaning that clothing companies are struggling to survive. There have also been changes in the way people are purchasing their clothing. More and more people are making internet purchases, for instance, and large discount retailers are continuing to force smaller chains out of business by pricing their goods at a rate less successful businesses cannot hope to match. If we could turn our attention now to the...
Copyright Pearson Education Limited, 2005.